This is the Cort KX700TT, and it's the first guitar I've tried in a long time that has special feature synergy. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I'm sure you've tried a guitar in the past with special pickups or maybe a special tremolo bridge, but oftentimes that one special feature is the only highlight in an otherwise average or even lackluster guitar. It's like a bad movie that happens to have one great actor or a bad album that happens to have one or two great songs. Anyway, this guitar is different. As you can see, it has these unique true temperament frets. That's probably the first thing that caught your eye, but this guitar also has many other great features that work synergistically to create a truly unique and high-end instrument. So we're going to start with the true temperament frets, get an understanding of the potential strengths and weaknesses of the system, and then we'll work through the rest of the instrument to see how everything else fits together so well. Oh, but before we start, if you've never heard of Cort, that doesn't really matter because there's still a good chance you've played one of their guitars. If you do a little research, you'll see that a bunch of your favorite guitar companies that are specifically known for their high-end guitars, yeah, a bunch of them use Cort to make their instruments. It's a long list and I'm sure someone will comment below with the exact companies and so on, but long story short, quality won't be an issue with this guitar. So let's get on to discussing these frets. I know a bunch of you are going to be thinking that this whole true temperament frets thing is just a gimmick, so we'll get right to the proof. I'm going to play just 3 chords you've probably played a bunch of times yourself in the past. One is going to be on, of course, the Cort true temperament guitar, and the other example is coming from another guitar that is perfectly intonated, perfectly in tune, and that costs even more than the Cort guitar. So no excuses here. So I'm assuming a good amount of you got the test correct. So now let's focus on why these differences exist. So the guitar is a pretty unique instrument because we only have 6 or 7 or 8, or I guess 9. We have somewhere between 6 and 9 strings that we only tune at the headstock. And once we tune at the headstock and intonate at the bridge, we have very little ability to make sure that each note at every single fret is perfectly in tune because each fret is exactly the same across the strings, usually. And this is particularly noticeable when playing certain chords. For example, F major down here usually sounds pretty bad. G major sounds fantastic. There's just so much difference in clarity between each chord. And a lot of this is because each string has a different amount of mass. Pressing down on each string requires different amounts of force and so on. But none of these factors are taken into consideration with normal frets and normal fret spacing. And I can't stress this next point enough. If you really think about it, the guitar is a pretty strange instrument. When you look inside a piano, there are strings for every single note, and a piano tuner tunes every string separately. He tunes the note C, then C sharp, then D, and so on up all of the different keys. And then other string instruments like the cello, viola, and violin, they don't have frets at all. And as a result, players move ever so slightly to compensate for intonation when they're playing things. But the solution is not a fretless guitar. For one, it's nearly impossible to play large complex chords in tune on a fretless guitar. The tone is totally different, the sustain is different, it's just a totally different instrument than the fretted guitar. True temperament frets are an attempt to consider these factors to bring the guitar closer to perfect tuning when playing in common guitar keys. Now you have to tune and intonate the instrument a little bit differently, but afterward, everything else is the same. It feels mostly the same as a normal guitar, playing single notes, vibrato bends, it's all the same, there's no issues. But then when you go to play normal guitar chords, they sound more in tune, and you also get more powerful sustain, resonance, and overtones because of how everything just sings so well together on the true temperament frets. So now that you understand the benefits of true temperament frets, let's hear some examples that highlight where the system shines, and that's with chords, of course. So let's kill two birds with one stone. This guitar, of course, has the Fishman-influenced modern pickups, which I'm sure you've heard many demos of by now. Everyone loves these pickups because they're so versatile. You can play anything from jazz to metal. We have a 3-way switch, neck, bolt, or just the bridge, master volume, master tone. We have a coil split with this switch right here. And then we have a push-pull on the volume knob to change the different voices for the Fishman-influenced pickups. As you listen to these tones, you're going to listen to the sound of the different pickups, of course, but also pay close attention to how the chords sound with these true temperament frets. And if you want to know my opinion, we'll save that to the end of the video. Whenever we talk about something like true temperament frets on a guitar, there's always going to be someone who says things like, well, Jimi Hendrix didn't need true temperament frets to make music, and no, he didn't. But then again, if you go back to Jimi Hendrix time, someone might say, well, we don't need electric guitars and we don't need distortion because Andre Segovia, he never needed those things. So yeah, I did a whole separate video on this system with comparisons between true temperament frets and regular frets, true temperament in the mix, and there's also a long Q&A, so I'll link that video below if you're interested. If you've never tried them before, I say you should definitely give it a shot. And if you're not interested, that's totally fine too. Cort makes a bunch of other high-end guitars that have normal frets. Now let's move on to the rest of the guitar to see how the other design elements work together so well. Starting from the top, we have a black headstock that matches the body and Cort's new, more aggressive logo, and 6 Cort branded locking tuners that work great as expected. And then we also have a GrafTech black tusk nut. You'll see on the back that we have a 5-piece roasted maple and walnut neck, and this should be extremely stable, and in my testing it has been. First, the idea behind roasting a neck is to pull out even more moisture, making the wood extra light and dense. Kind of like when you leave oatmeal on the stove for too long and then it turns into this really hard and edible block thing. That's the idea behind roasting a maple neck. But then on top of that, when you glue together multiple pieces of wood, everything kind of locks together and gets even more stable. And I can say in the couple of months that I've had this guitar, I have basically never had to tune it. I haven't had to do any truss rod adjustments. It's been extremely stable and extremely reliable. There's also a very smooth satin back and lumen lace side dots, which of course glow in the dark. And back to the front of the guitar, we have an Indian rosewood fingerboard, and we have the truss rod adjustment at the base of the neck, which in my opinion is the best spot. I just leave a bunch of wrenches on my desk, and if I ever need to make an adjustment, I can quickly get in there and then get right back to what I was working on. And the neck itself is definitely on the thinner side. If you played any other modern guitars, you pretty much know what you're going to get. There's a little bit of shoulder, it's a little bit flat on the back, but overall, I would say it's comfortably thin. For the body, we have an open pore ash top on an African mahogany body. And I'm not entering the tone wood debate, but I will say, for anyone who is on the belief side of the tone woods debate spectrum, that would theoretically mean you have the warmth from the mahogany and the brightness of the ash on top. Kind of like mixing together the tones of a T-style guitar and a single cut style guitar. And speaking of hotly debated guitar topics that I won't state my opinion on today, we also have a bolt-on neck, which I know a lot of metal guys like, especially for the extra snap, pick attack, and crispness when playing rhythm guitar. To make things really simple, you heard the guitar a few times already throughout this video. If you like those tones, that's what you're getting with this instrument. So now let's return to something we can all agree upon, and that is the upper horn design. As you can see, there's a lot of sculpting up here in the front. So if you're an upper fret shredder, you'll love this design because you can play every single fret very comfortably. Or if you're like me, you can use this great high fret access plus the true temperament frets to get some really beautiful sounding chords way up here. And the body overall is very comfortable. The satin carved top is extremely nice. You can feel the open pore design on your arm. And then there's of course a really nice belly cut on the back. I want to talk about another awesome feature, and that's the Schaller harness bridge. Finding a guitar that comes with this bridge stock is extremely difficult. In fact, John Brown, who was of course known for being an amazing rhythm metal guy, he had this bridge on his prior signature guitar, but when he switched companies, he couldn't get it on his new signature guitar. From what I understand, these bridges can be a bit more difficult to install and they're a bit more expensive, but I think it's totally worth it. You can quickly adjust intonation in the back for all of you who switch tunings a lot. And then on top of that, when you go to adjust the string height, there's just one screw right in front of the string instead of the usual two. So adjusting intonation and string height is extremely fast. And then the bridge has a very low profile and the saddles are extremely smooth, this nice composite material. It's one of the most comfortable bridges I've ever played for palm muting in particular. And our last high-end touch is the Fishman-Fluence modern pickups. So many players have fallen in love with these pickups because they can do practically anything from cleans to metal and everything in between. They're just a phenomenal pickup. I actually prefer the Fishman-Fluence rechargeable battery pack, but I did a quick poll on my channel and a bunch of you actually prefer old school 9-volt batteries like we have here. And it makes a lot of sense. If you're ever going to run on stage like right this second and you realize your battery is dead, you can easily throw in a 9-volt battery instead of having to plug the guitar in and wait. So I totally understand why we went with the 9-volt battery pack instead of the rechargeable one. And someone in the poll recommended that you just use 9-volt rechargeable batteries, which I never thought about. And I think that is the best solution that we have. And the final thing is that this guitar comes in a very, very nice, very high quality padded gig bag. So I'll wrap things up by giving you my personal opinions on this particular instrument. The first thing is that this is of course a high-end instrument, so it's going to be out of some people's price range. That's just how these things work, unfortunately. But on top of that, it also has a lot of unique features like the true temperament frets and this particular shallow bridge. These are things that some people may or may not like. But if you're someone who heard these features and heard these tones and likes the way it sounds and you like the idea of this instrument, you really can't find anything else like it on the market today. So the interesting thing is that I kind of think about this guitar starting from the true temperament frets and working my way out. Let me explain. So the true temperament frets are here to make the tuning sound really beautiful and crisp and all of that stuff, of course. But if you're going to have a guitar that's specifically designed to showcase the intonation, well, you want the guitar to be very stable. So you go, okay, let's roast the maple neck to make the tuning stability better. And then on top of that, we'll use multiple pieces of wood on the neck to make it even more stable. And that definitely worked out because this guitar's tuning stability is phenomenal. I very rarely tune it, which again is super important because we're trying to highlight the intonation. And then of course, if you're going to have a guitar with a fairly expensive and fancy fret system, you're going to want it to be very versatile. So we throw on the Fishman-Fluence modern pickup so that we can get a wide variety of tones from jazzy to blues to metal. And then you go, okay, well, if I'm going to play metal on this guitar, what would be the most high-end bridge I can add to this guitar? And that is, of course, this particular shallow bridge. So the guitar actually makes a lot of sense and it came together extremely well, very stable, very versatile. The Fishman-Fluence pickups, the true temperament frets, these are just tools on an instrument and that's ultimately going to be used by someone who was inspired by that instrument. So the question is going to be, do these features inspire you? And for me, the answer is yes. I wrote the arrangement of When I Fall in Love specifically after I got this guitar and specifically because I felt like it was so in tune, it resonated so well, the sustain was so nice that I wanted to create a very slow jazz arrangement that took advantage of that intonation. So lots of harmonics, lots of long gaps of sound where we can hear the sustain, things like that. All of that was inspired by this instrument. So if you're interested, you can check out this guitar, link below. And as we fade into this next clip, the full arrangement, listen specifically to the intonation, how in tune everything is, and the beautiful sustain and tone from this guitar.